a dark room, a desk. Lines of code scroll rapidly downward. Too fast to read, but precise, deliberate. The hum of a machine fills the silence. April 20th, 2016. A man sits alone at the desk. His face is half lit by the screen. Still, focused. Watching inside one of the most secure intelligence agencies in the world. On this day, he accessed files that were never meant to leave a classified server. By the end of the year, those files would be published online, exposing the Central Intelligence Agency's most powerful cyber weapons to the world. This is the story of how it happened, and of the man who made it possible. The story doesn't begin with a leak. It begins inside a system built on secrecy, an intelligence agency designed to protect information at all costs, where access is everything and trust is assumed. Joshua Adam Schulte was a software engineer. By his late 20s, he was working at the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence, an elite unit responsible for developing digital tools used in espionage operations overseas. These were not defensive systems. They were designed to break into networks, bypass encryption, and exploit vulnerabilities in phones, computers, and smart devices. Schulte had access to the code behind those tools, access that came with one expectation above all else: silence. But inside the agency, tensions were building. Former colleagues later described Schulte as intelligent, technically skilled, but difficult. Disputes with co-workers escalated. His relationship with management deteriorated. Eventually, he was reassigned away from the team that handled the most sensitive cyber tools. What no one realized at the time was that Schulte still had a way in. Before leaving his original role, Schulte created a hidden administrator account on a CIA server, a backdoor. On April 20th, 2016, he used that access. Over time, he copied massive archives of classified material, source code, internal documentation, detailed instructions explaining how CIA cyber weapons worked. The files revealed capabilities that had never been publicly acknowledged, including tools that could infiltrate smartphones, turn televisions into listening devices, and disguise cyber attacks to make them appear as if they came from foreign governments. This was not a single document. It was a blueprint. In March 2017, the material went public. WikiLeaks gave it a name: Vault 7. Thousands of files began appearing online. Quietly at first. Technical documents, internal reports, detailed descriptions of covert cyber tools developed inside the CIA. The volume was unprecedented. Page after page, file after file, released in steady succession. Not a summary. Not a leak of highlights, but a deep archive. Then came more. Follow-up releases, later labeled Vault 8, went even further, exposing the actual source code behind the tools themselves. This wasn't just what the systems could do. It was how they were built. The reaction was immediate and global. Governments around the world studied the files, assessing what had been revealed and what it meant for their own systems. Cybersecurity researchers and independent experts began dissecting the material line by line, verifying claims, testing assumptions, confirming that much of what had once been dismissed as speculation was, in fact, real. News organizations raced to understand the scope of what had been released. Headlines spread rapidly. The story moved from technical circles into the public consciousness. Inside the CIA, the response was far quieter and far more urgent. Teams were assembled to assess the damage, to determine what had been exposed and what could no longer be used. Entire operations were compromised. Methods painstakingly developed over years were effectively burned. Capabilities that relied on secrecy no longer had it. The scope of the loss was staggering, financially, strategically, operationally. What had been taken could not simply be replaced. Officials would later describe it as the largest data breach in CIA history. But even as the fallout continued, attention was already shifting, because the question was no longer what had been leaked. It was who had done it. The FBI and CIA launched an aggressive internal investigation. Digital logs told a story, access patterns narrowed the suspect list, and eventually the trail pointed back to one former employee, Joshua Schulte. In August 2017, federal agents arrested him, initially on unrelated charges discovered on his personal computer. As the investigation expanded, prosecutors connected Schulte directly to the Vault 7 disclosures. They alleged that after taking the files, he transmitted them from his home computer to WikiLeaks, one of the most infamous publishing platforms in the world. Schulte denied responsibility, and the case would soon become one of the most complex espionage trials in modern U.S. history. In February 2024, Joshua Schulte returned to court for sentencing. Prosecutors asked for decades behind bars, calling his actions some of the most damaging acts of espionage in American history. The judge agreed. Joshua Schulte was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, a punishment reflecting both the scale of the intelligence breach and the severity of his other crimes. For the CIA, the case forced a reckoning with insider threats, access controls, and the fragile nature of digital secrecy. For Schulte, it marked the end of a life once defined by access to power, now reduced to confinement. In the digital age, the greatest threats don't always come from outside. Sometimes they're already inside the system, trusted, credentialed, and unseen.